This is day 8 of Livember, and we are here today with another banger conversation. I already know it's gonna be fire, so I just had to go and put that out there, right?
Mhm.
Today's topic is avoiding the cost of commitment, right? And so, Janelle, would you like to give a little story of how you how overcommitment plays a part for you?
Sure. So, overcommitment is one of the traps, or I should say, emotional snipers, I've found myself in, especially this year. So, naturally, I'm a very high achiever. I like personal growth, I like doing all the things. And in my opinion, I have a lot of gifts. And I've noticed that when you're multifaceted, that overcommitment happens to you because you overestimate what you can do. So you actually don't understand your limitations that well. And number two, especially when you have a lot of new things on the horizon, I've noticed that I can overcommit because I'm acting like the old version of myself in a new season. And that never works. So if I'm in Canaan, I can't be acting like I was in Egypt, right? If I'm in the palace where Pharaoh is, I can't act like where I was when I was in Jesse's house. In my father's house, in Jacob's house. And so I found myself in that position. And for me, it was very much linked to me liking to achieve things and being overly committed to my personal growth. And that was a problem. And number two, I would say people pleasing. That is what I struggled with. And it led to some overcommitment, especially this year. And I'm still fighting with it all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can empathize with that because for me,
Mhm.
what overcommitment actually looks like for me as an entrepreneur, right, is like you said, being that multifaceted, that a person that can do a lot of things, right? I'm gifted to do a lot of things, and my problem was I want to do everything. I want to make sure that I hit every box
Mhm.
and make sure that okay, I'm good in this area, I'm good in this area. But what did that do for me? For me, that stretched me so thin to where now I'm burnt out,
Mhm.
I'm stressed out, and I don't even want to do it anymore. Right? I
Yeah.
don't want to do any of it. Right? Go into business, do talk to people, any of that because my bandwidth was once really good, but now my bandwidth isn't really good at all. Right? And so one thing that I had thought about, and based off what you said the other day, right? Commitment seems easy until it actually challenges your ability to actually show up, right? Especially when it's the least convenient,
Yep. Yep.
right? A lot, like for me, a lot of times it's just like, man, yes, I'm very committed. I'm a very committed person until it's at an inconvenient time, right? And a lot of times that challenges, I'm gonna say me, right? It challenges me to have to make hard decisions because I didn't prioritize time. I didn't prioritize um space for me to actually be where I'm supposed to be at. So overcommitting is a dangerous thing, especially for entrepreneurs and people. So what do you believe the cost of commitment actually looks like for you?
I think the cost of commitment for me is seasonal. So every season, I'm big on understanding time and seasons, right? I'm very big on that. I will always talk about it because I don't think life is the same way. And a season isn't necessarily like um winter, summer, spring. It's just basically a defined period in your life where a certain thing keeps happening. So, for example, a season of evolution, a season of transition, a season of letting go, right? So for me, the cost of my commitment is per time, per season, and it actually changes every day. So when I schedule things, I tend to do something called the highlight of the day. And so that's the thing that I must get done. And I tend to try to revolve everything around that. So that's how I determine the cost of what I would be committed to on that day. In terms of the week, when I set weekly goals, right, I will decide how I will say yes or no during the week because I already mapped out the week. So I know where I would have flexi room. So the cost for me of commitment is all about seasons. It's all about my vision. It's all about my goals. It's all about my priorities. And when I keep those things in check, and the last thing I would say is my treasures. And what I mean by treasures is those things that I think that are so near and dear to me that I have to protect it. And so therefore I protect my yes because I want to protect my treasures. So that's the cost for me. How about you?
That's good. That's good because it kind of goes back to an earlier statement of what does that cost actually look like for me, right? The time, the the promises that are made to people, right? Opportunities. And
Mm-hmm.
so like whenever you actually say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another thing. And
Many things.
so right,
Many things.
right. And so a lot of times you don't really understand what you're actually saying yes to because a lot of people will say yes, I can do this for you, I can help you out, but then on the backside of it, once you're actually in that position, now we're thinking, oh, I forgot that I had to do this, oh, I forgot that this was actually happening. So what that cost actually looks like is one, burnout, two, broken promises,
Mhm.
and three, missed opportunities,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because like for me, before I actually got my life together as far as structure and prioritizing and stuff like that, I would always say, yes, I'm gonna help you with whatever. You call me, you got me, right? You call me, you got me.
Wow.
But in this current season right now, that's no longer the case. I
Mm-hmm.
can't be there for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because one, I'm not gonna have to put myself in a position to lie to you to say that yes, I was coming, but now I can't come anymore. For me to spend all my time doing something that other people want versus actually taking care of self,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that cost is going back to me saying yes and me saying no. Sometimes no is the best thing to do
Mm-hmm.
because it actually avoids all that.
Yeah, I agree. You said something. You said burnout, right?
Mhm.
And earlier you had said you were stretched too thin, and that was when you realized, okay, something has to change. And I feel like sometimes we get to that point because we overestimate our capacity and we underestimate the cost of what we've said yes to. So it's overestimation and underestimation. And when those two things don't match, it's going to always lead to burnout. Because especially when you enter into a new season, you could lag behind the shift. So you're in a new place, for example, for you, right? You could be scaling a business, starting a business, right? And you lag behind that because you think, oh, well, this is just business. But what I've noticed is any shift in any area of my life affects every area of my life.
Mhm.
So business is never isolated, right? Your home life is never isolated. Your work life is never isolated. Your spiritual life is never isolated. And so when you think you're saying yes to launching a business or scaling a business, You're actually saying yes to disruption in every area of your life. And sometimes what seems like an easy yes for business becomes a problem in every other area. And that's where the overcommitment comes. Because that's why I think the yes has to be evaluated, not just for the thing you're saying it to, but for everything else it will disrupt.
That's true. That's true. And I like that you said that, whenever you actually say yes to one thing, so saying yes to growing a business, saying yes to actually scaling a business, or it actually touches every other parts of your life, right? So business and life aren't two separate things. They're both the same thing, right? And a lot of times, sometimes we try to see it as two different things, but once we actually see the pieces crumbling, we're just like, what really happened? What,
Yes,
what
you said yes, and you didn't understand what you did.
you didn't understand the cost of the commitment that you actually made,
Nope. Nope.
right? And there's this phrase that I say every now and then, right? The Some money costs too much to make, right? Because with that phrase, some money costs too much to make, what is you actually making that money costing you on the back end? What part of that commitment, what is the back end of that, right? So moving up in a new position, what are you sacrificing? You're sacrificing time with your family. You're sacrificing, if you're growing a business, you're sacrificing time spent on growing that business, right? And so sometimes a lot of us need to count the cost before we even say yes.
Right. And doesn't it link back to Jesus, right? Like he told us, he laid this out. He said, "What man going to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost to see if he has enough to finish it?"
Right.
Because it's easy to be a starter, but it's very difficult to be a finisher. And finishers are people who know how to, number one, focus, and number two, avoid overcommitment as much as possible. Because overcommitment is what will prevent you from finishing. Because what overcommitment is, it is a distraction. It looks like you can do a lot and it makes you feel good, but it's actually a distraction because when it leads to burnout, right? What happens to you? You said it at the beginning. You can become discouraged. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to show up anymore. And when discouragement sets in, you just never finish. It's as simple as that. You had the mind to work, but because you overcommitted so much at the start, you just never finished that thing that was a passion project. You never finish in terms of drafting policies for your business. You never finish, right? In that business idea or that promotion that you said you were going to do because you overcommitted to running 5 promotions instead of just one. You never finish.
And you said something just now, and it triggered a thought, right? A lot of us can start a thing, but a lot of us can't even finish it.
Us.
Right.
Us.
Right.
Us.
And it brings me to like the thought of a conversation that was had about being a visionary, right? Having that apostolic type gifting, right?
Yeah.
You're able to start it and see it the wheel start rolling, but you don't want to babysit it. Have you have you been in a spot to where you actually started and finished to know whether you actually can leave at that point in time? Right. So like for me, I've started a lot of things. But the way that my mind worked was I committed to this one thing and then I said yes to another thing. So what happened? That the first thing that I was working on got put on the back burner.
Yes.
And ultimately it died.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the choir. Because especially this year, like this topic is so near and dear to me because I'm like recovering from overcommitment to myself more than anything else. As I said, I started saying I'm such a high achiever, right? So I thought I could improve on coaching, I could improve on communication, I could improve on this. No, I had to choose one, settle with the one thing, figure out how I can maximize my impact with that one thing. And like one of the guys from Hardly Initiated said, right? You're not God. Stop trying to be omnipresent. You just need to establish a presence. And when he said that, it was like kaboom in my head because he literally took a shot, like he detonated so many strongholds I had in my brain still with that one statement. People who achieve, like, do you ever see a runner for the Olympics? Do you ever see them trying to run in every lane? They run in their lane only.
Right.
They don't even focus on the other people to the left and right of them. They run in their lane only, and the only place they look is at the finish line. That's because they focus. They focus. And I think that is probably one of the words I had this year, focus. Figuring out how to just focus. And I just feel like when you're very gifted, man, this is the thing that will really, really mess you up. It will mess you up. Like you have everything to succeed, but you won't because your multi-giftedness, that multi-potentialite aspect of you is actually a strength and a weakness. And if you can't manage overcommitment, it will be a weakness, whether in business or in life.
And I'm glad you actually brought up the quote from Hardly Initiated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to be God and trying to be omnipresent. The only thing that you actually need is for you to actually be present.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing about that is, you know, like I said, I tried to start multiple things at one time, but it didn't really work. Why? I gave this example of how you have multiple cups and you have one water hose. You can't fill all of those cups up at the same time. Right? Get good at one thing. Get good at one thing. And then once you actually get good and recognize in that one area, the momentum from that one thing is going to translate over into the others.
Right.
So what does that mean? Going back to your word for the year, focus. Focus on one thing at a time. Don't overcommit. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a multitasker. I can't do two things at one time. That's just not me. Because if I try to multitask, I'm like a person with ADHD. I'm gonna go here. Oh, I see another thing. Then I'm gonna go here. Oh, I could work on this. Then I'm gonna go there.
All right.
But the one thing that I found that really helped me as far as building and growing is focusing on that one thing to actually finish the foundation of where I am.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
Always, because we seem to have been in the same place, right? And we're very similar. What was your light bulb moment that made you say, yes, I'm gifted, but I'm struggling with overcommitment and it's actually not working? Like, what did you see or feel that really just sparked something in you?
That's a great question. So, so I guess the moment for me of when I actually noticed that, okay, I'm multi-gifted and I'm actually overcommitting was a few years ago.
All
right. So as a photographer, I wanted to do photography. I loved doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was good at what I was doing. However, I also wanted to do YouTube. I also wanted to be a videographer. I also wanted to be an editor. I also wanted to.
Oh, Lord.
Right. I wanted to do all these things. It's all in the same industry. Right. And for me, I wanted to be good at all these things, but I mastered well, I'm not even gonna say master because there's always a place for you to actually learn in photography, right? But
Yeah.
for my style, I mastered that.
Right.
And so now the next step for me was, okay, now I want to learn videography, which is polar opposites of what photography is.
Mm-hmm.
Photography is just click, click, you're standing still or we're,
Yeah.
but you can, I'm not gonna say you could be perfect with photography,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no such thing as being perfect in videos.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of ideas coming. And for me, I was just like, okay, I can't do all of these things at one time. I can't do it. And for me, it killed my creative mind at that point in time. It took me
Mm-hmm.
about 3 weeks for me to really just recoup because of how much energy I was trying to put to all of these different aspects. Right? It's okay to learn, but learn one thing. So for me, if I was gonna go from photography, I should have started with being
Mm-hmm.
more masterful with editing, then going into videography, then going into something else.
Right. I like so the two things I heard you say was the loss of creativity. It started to kill your creativity, which for me to answer that question, I would say I started to feel stretched too thin, and it was like constant anxiety. Like I don't know how a hamster on a wheel feels, but that probably described who I was, going fast but going nowhere.
Mm. Mm.
Going fast but going nowhere, and a feeling of constant busyness, but I cannot see the output. I know the input, but I couldn't see the output. Why? I was overcommitting and distracted. And that's the cost, that's the price I paid, unfortunately.
And
Until I
was
came,
it worth it?
oh, 100% not. I am so much at peace. I am at peace. Like, and you know you've grown when somebody could like come up with a suggestion and you could be like, yeah, nah, that's not for right now. It is good, but I could table that because it's not for right now.
Right. So based off our conversation so far, these
Mhm.
are a couple things that I had some points that I was gonna pop out, but we essentially hit all of them through the conversation. And so
Yeah.
the 5 points that I actually heard was make sure that you actually evaluate your commitments before you actually say yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Right? Count the cost before you actually say yes. Learn how to say no. Learn how to say no.
Hmm.
Setting boundaries,
Hmm.
focusing on consistency in the right area.
Hmm.
Right? So not stretching yourself to 5 different things, but being consistent in the one,
Yeah.
and then actually having a support system. So having a community of people to actually push you to be better,
All
right?
right.
To see where I'm. So like when we have our conversations, I know for a fact that you'll be like, you sound like you're doing a lot. Why are you why? Right? And so I feel like those 5 things really would change the game for people who actually overcommit, because one, you'll be able to get more things done. You'll see your reward faster,
Hmm.
right? You'll have increased bandwidth, meaning you'll have more energy to do more things because you're not spending that mental capacity on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yes. Yes. Enjoyment is another reason
Mm,
because you didn't get into photography because, and I could just safely assume you didn't enjoy it. I think it was something you enjoyed, but overcommitment killed your creativity for something you actually enjoyed. So sometimes when you lose that passion, it's because of the emotional sniper that you have failed to deal with. So if you don't deal with the overcommitment, then you could lose your joy for business. You like the product that you sell, you like the service you deliver, but you're trying to do too much. So the very thing that had your heart, now it's occupying more of your head, and you're serving out of your head and not your heart
And
because
there's a
of no,
complete quality difference.
a complete quality difference. Complete, 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 complete.
So I see we're getting close to our time, but
Yeah.
we're still gonna add a little sauce. So if you were to actually coach somebody right now
Mhm.
based off of their overcommitment to these things, what would be something that you could actually help them do? Like what advice would you actually give them?
So I think depending on where they are in life, I think the first thing with coaching is always to locate the person. They need to locate themselves. Because in the Garden of Eden, the first question the Lord asked Adam was, "Where are you?" You can't go anywhere until you know your starting point.
Hmm.
And so the first thing I'll ask them, "Where are you?" And we'll go through, like I have this thing I like to talk about, these 9 core areas of life, right? The tree of life. And so I'll ask them spiritually, where are you? Mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, business, your relationships, your social life, and your career. Because your business isn't necessarily a career for everybody else, right? So I'll ask them, where are you? Number 2, where do you want to be? Because you have to map out the points. I need to know where you are and where you're going. And then we start leading you there gradually. Where do you want to be? What is keeping you back from being there? What do you think it is? And I think overcommitment is just a surface symptom, but it's actually rooted in something. So I don't believe real transformation ever happens until you address the root. The fruit is what you see, the root is what you don't, and the root is the actual cause of the problem. The fruit is just the symptom of it. And so digging into that, digging into why they overcommit, where that comes from, what is the narrative that plays in their head every time they feel like they have to say yes, and the effect of that. Because when you understand consequence and cause, then you can actually change the outcome. So that's basically how I would coach somebody systematically out of overcommitment.
Okay. Okay. So do you feel like do you still overcommit right now?
I think I am more careful. And like sometimes it's there, like on the tip of my tongue. And then I'm like, oh, peel it back. I'm like, you know what? Like when somebody comes up with a problem, even though I know the answer, I'm like, withhold this, sort out what's on your plate. It's like going to a buffet, right? Why are you going to stand up in the line and take more food when you didn't eat the plate that eat the food off your plate? That's dumb. It can't fit anywhere. It's dumb. It can't fit anywhere. So I try to make sure I eat the food on my plate before I offer to add your food to my plate. That's what I do.
Cool. So where can the people find you at this point? Right? Because I know I enjoy our coaching calls and
Uh,
the conversations that we have. Where can people actually find you?
so for right now, you can find me on Instagram because I am focused. I'm staying on one platform at this point in time.
Right.
At the Janelle Henry. That's just my name, and because there is nobody else. So that's where you find me on Instagram, and I post content there Monday to Friday, twice a day. You can find me there and get some clarity for your life wherever you're confused.
Cool. And you guys can find me on IG, YouTube, well, those two platforms for real. Um, IG and YouTube at the Marion Davis, right? Because I'm a little bit further off, and you know, there's a system to actually to working how posting and all those good things, right? We
Yeah.
haven't made it there just yet, but we are. We're going to get there.
Nice.
So until next time, you guys stay blessed by the best, and we'll see y'all tomorrow because it's live Ember every day.